Then I would say next was Canada. Again, in my younger years, it's just places that I went with my family. But the first international trip that I took as like a young adult was to Cancun, Mexico for spring break. Wild times back in the early 2000s, and that's really where I got to start developing my love for just seeing other cultures and experiencing the world as an adult.
Well, you mentioned the early 2000s, man. That was
Yeah.
pretty much 20 years ago, man.
Yeah.
So the only reason why I'm mentioning that is I kind of want to know what would you say is the major difference between traveling back then and traveling now? Like, how have things changed in terms of traveling?
I would say things have changed a lot because back then you barely had websites that were geared towards travel. So when we were booking these package, man, this is so old. When we were booking these packages to go on these spring break trips, we literally would get the brochure from the dormitory bulletin board, right?
Oh
And it was
man.
like, all right, STS, Sunsplash, Student City, comparing which hotels they had. And all you had to make your decision was the price and a little thumbnail picture of what that hotel looked like on the exterior. And that was it. And you're like, all right, we're picking this hotel because the price is right and it looks like it's located well on the strip. It's completely different. Like you didn't have YouTube, didn't have Instagram, Facebook, none of that to do any research. It was literally a thumbnail picture, the pictures that were in the brochure, cross your fingers, and everything else was experienced as you went. There was no planning your trip in advance. There was no, I'm definitely hitting this club. You didn't know what existed till you got there.
Yeah.
So completely different time.
I could only imagine, man, because I think that's something that this new generation, like my generation, takes for granted. Like we have cell phones, computers, so much stuff to tell us where to go, where not to go. YouTubers such as yourself that has so much knowledge. It's just crazy. I can only imagine, man. Back then, it's almost like you're lost in the sauce. You don't know exactly where to go to, whatever the case is, what's good, what's bad. So yeah, man, I could only imagine how different it was back then. But tell me this, man. What would you say was your favorite country that you visited and why?
I still stand on Brazil as being one of my favorite countries. And the reason for that is the diversity of the people, the diversity that exists, that kind of commingles in the culture, the variety of landscapes that are there. Brazil is very much like America when it comes to the scale of the country,
Yeah.
the number of people, and the fact that Brazilians have a very well defined culture. Like they are Brazilian first, just like Americans are kind of American first. So between the landscapes, the people, just the mashup of the indigenous culture, the various European cultures, and the African cultures makes for a really interesting place. That's unlike anywhere else that I've been. Familiar in that it's like the other Latin countries, as far as speaking a Latin language, having more of a interest in just enjoying life. Very American in that it is part of the Americas, but also has this other kind of, I don't know, it factor that's going on there that's like no other place that I've been to.
So what do you mean by it factor? Like, do you mean that it's a great like what exactly you mean by the it factor?
I just when I'm there, I feel like I'm actually experiencing life. Like
Gotcha.
I don't know how else to describe it. Like right now I'm in Colombia and I'm in Medellin, so it's a city that's in the mountains, and it's cool to look at, and it feels still fairly real, right? Like you have a good range of uh, socioeconomic stratuses, I would say, and you have like this same kind of pleasure-seeking culture where people are really out to have a good time, to spend time with their family, to spend time with their friends, and really enjoy life. Brazil is the same in that way, except you you just have, I don't know, for example, Rio de Janeiro, you have that same mountainous landscape butted up against a beach that also has like this South Beach Miami sort of vibe to it. It just hits you really all senses all the time. I don't know. It's unlike anything that anywhere else that I've been.
I would agree with you, man. I mean, when I went to Rio for the first time, I felt like I was in a movie. I was like, a place like this exists. Like, there's a bunch of beaches, mountains, like just everything about that city. Just Brazil in general. Brazil just has so many like fascinating cities and landscapes, and the people are just as fascinating. Like I always tell people that with Brazil, I feel like the highlight of Brazil, the best thing about Brazil isn't like Christ the Redeemer or the beaches or whatever people think it is. I think the best thing about Brazil is the people. I think the people really make Brazil special. That's what makes it special at the end of the day, in my personal opinion. But let me get down to these comments. We have a couple comments over here. So we got Charles Jones. This is the live stream that we need. Everyone says to leave, but aren't leaving the blueprint. All right, I got you, my man. Thank you for tuning in, man. I really appreciate you tuning in. Kevin Coy, am I too late? No, you're not, my friend. And then he says, I just recently found Carl, me too, on YouTube. We have a lot in common. All right, I would love to hear what you guys have in common. Charles, again, he says, Brazil's really amazing. The people are what makes Brazil. Well, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was saying, man. Is this all right? It's so cool. Don't get me wrong. The beaches are cool. The landscape, the food, everything's cool. But there's just something like the people just make that place so special, man. They embrace you. They're passionate. They're affectionate. They're warm, social people, and that's what makes it great. But let's dive into your first property. So, what was your first property overseas? Can you tell us how that went?
The first property overseas. Yeah. So the first property overseas was a property in Italy. So for those who don't know, they're selling properties in Italy for as little as $1.
Wow.
And I saw an article about this. Actually, my brother had sent me the article and was like, hey, Carl, I think you should check this out. It'd be cool. Wouldn't it be cool to like buy a property, have a vineyard in Italy? And I was like, yeah, I guess that would be pretty cool. So I looked into it and I found one of the towns. It was actually in the news article that were hosting these €1 homes. So I flew out there. I set up an appointment to see some of the properties. I flew out there, and my mindset was, there's not much coverage on it. I'm going to go out there. I'll cover it for my channel and show what you could get in Italy for $1. The entire experience, me going there, commuting from Palermo to Musumeli, which is the town that I bought in, and show people who are curious about this what they can actually expect, right? Because it was just a black and white text-based article, so I wanted to give a little texture to the story. So I went out there, I toured some of the €1 homes, and in the same town, they were selling properties that were for more than €1. So the €1 houses are in pretty bad shape, need to be completely restored. But for a few $1,000s, like $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, you could buy a home that is essentially livable. Wow. So I ended up buying 2 properties there, one for €5,000, one for €12,000, both of them livable, and documented that entire process of restoring the homes and utilizing them as now my vacation homes when I travel with my family.
So, out of curiosity, why were those homes only €1? Like, was it because they were like in really, really bad condition? Like, what is up with that?
Yeah, they're pretty much abandoned homes in smaller towns. So this town has around 11 or 12,000 people. It's in central Sicily. It's more of like a farming sort of community. And Italy, like next behind Japan, there's €1 homes in Japan too, or $1 homes in Japan. Italy has one of the oldest and fastest declining populations in the world. So people historically have been leaving these small towns, going to Germany, England, the United States for employment opportunities, and they haven't been repopulating these towns. So you have literally these towns becoming ghost towns, and you have these abandoned properties that no one is caring for. So they came up with this initiative to sell them all for $1 to try to get people to kind of come back to the communities, reinvest in the communities. They've done the same in the United States. You know, in Harlem, New York, there was, you know, during the crack epidemic, they were selling properties, brownstones in Harlem for $1 to firefighters, police officers, community leaders, and community workers. So this sort of program actually raises awareness and gets people to accumulate this excess sort of inventory that they have. But that's the reason why, is because, you know, towns are dying and properties are being left abandoned.
I mean, that's what I heard. I heard in Italy they have a very aging population, because I feel like as you said, a lot of people are going to other countries for, like, you know, because there's better money to be made in other places. But in terms of Italy, where would you say is a great city to get a home or buy real estate?
In Italy?
Yeah.
It really depends on you. What do you want out of a particular place? So if you're looking for kind of appreciation or rental income, you're going to need to be in one of the larger cities. So Rome, Milan, Naples. You're going to stand to benefit from just the sheer density of those towns, people coming in for tourism, people coming in for industry. So obviously Rome for tourism, Milan for industry. So I would say if you're a traditional real estate investor, that again, you're going to be looking for cash flow from rentals or long-term appreciation of the asset, then I would say those cities. If you're looking to get cheap properties that you're going to use for yourself, you want to just get away from the hustle and bustle of the city, you want to bring your living expenses down, then any place in rural Italy are going to have these sort of homes.
Gotcha. All right, let's take a look at these comments over here. So we got Dave, Carl, keep doing what you're doing. Awesome job. I agree. Charles, I've known about Carl. He has me reconsidering moving to Italy. Was number 1 on my list, but there are things about the European boot that that put me off. Still tied with Brazil as my favorite place on earth. I mean, I've been to Italy, and I feel like I liked Italy. I felt like I need to get to know it better. I was only in Rome, basically South Italy, Rome. I think the Amalfi Coast. So I need to go up north and see how North Italy is before even thinking or considering as Italy as a country to move. But I do like Brazil a lot, though. Kevin, what's left in Italy for $1 are pretty much ruins. JD, how were you welcomed by the people of Sicily? So I think
I got a video on this actually. I titled it "Racism in Italy" because a lot of people look at me and think, "Oh man, you know, you're going to be treated badly because you're a black person." It's quite the opposite. The people in Sicily have been very, very welcoming. They're really warm people, similar to Brazilians. So just to draw the parallel, if you're in a smaller town like Cabo Frio, or even if you're in like Guaraciba or Recreo or whatever, like outside of the main Copacabana area, neighbors will talk to you. People will talk to you. It's the same in Italy. Like you just kind of walking around being an outsider, people will be curious as to who are you? And you're like, oh, you know, just this American tourist visiting. Come inside my house, have a coffee, have an espresso. They want to practice their English with you, things like that. So at no time did I not feel welcome there. At no time did I feel like I was being discriminated against. It's quite the opposite. People were really intrigued by me and wanted to know more about who I was, what I was about. The first day that I got out there, I started filming, and I was like trying to capture the city itself or the town. And a few older gentlemen came over to me, and they're like, "Oh, they're selling homes €1." Right, and pointing to the community. And once they realized that I was an English speaker, they ran into the cafe, grabbed another old guy who had lived in the U.S. for a little while, so that he could talk and translate between us. So, you know, in this town, I could go out to the cafe, and the coffee will be on the house just because, or ice cream on the house. Everything, like it gets difficult to pay for things. You go to the local market, you buy some mushrooms. Here's some peppers on the house. Like they just, it's super welcoming. Like I would tell people that regardless of where you are in Sicily, the people are pretty awesome. And also Sicily has an interesting culture because they were occupied by the Spanish. They were occupied by the Moors. They were occupied, I believe, during the Ottoman expansion. So they have quite a few, like, they were occupied by the Greek. They have, like, the Romans, of course, at some point. So they have all of these, like, layers to their culture, in their food, in their language, in the look of the people. So they're really welcoming to outsiders, surprisingly.
So what would you say are some other great factors in terms of living in Italy besides the warm people and the great people?
Cost of living is fairly low. So the average wage in Sicily is going to be like $1,500 a month.
Okay. Yeah.
So you have to figure that prices are adjusted to that. If I go to the cafe in Musomelli, breakfast for me and my wife, coffee, a croissant, a juice, whatever is typical breakfast in Italy, might run us 11 euros. The coffee is like $1.50 at a sit-down cafe, so the cost of living is fairly low. Weekly supermarket run might be like 60, 70 euros. And that's to feed a family of 4. Rent. So if you're renting a 3-bedroom apartment in this town, like in a newer building, you're talking about 300 euros a month. Internet, 30 euros for 100 megabytes a second. So I would say that pricing is probably similar to like, if you're in Rio de Janeiro, kind of like Leblon, pricing for like lifestyle expense, or Sao Paulo as well. So someone who has $2,000 US as a single could do just fine.
Awesome. All right, definitely, man. I think you got me sold, man. I think I might start looking into Italy, man, for real. That sounds great. So Kevin says, Abruzzo. Is that like a place in Italy, Carl?
Abruzzo? Yeah, Abruzzo is another town that is selling €1 homes.
Oh, all right. I guess Kevin does know a lot about this stuff over here. All right. So JD says, are there websites to look for the homes?
No, not really, because unlike the US, there's not really like a MLS system in Italy. So each of the towns kind of like their local brokers manage these sort of properties, but you could get like idealista.com. You could kind of search properties there. That's kind of the closest thing that you could find to like a Zillow or a Redfin. But not all of these listings. What I would recommend is that you start doing some research on €1 homes in Italy, and you'll see different content creators talking about where they've purchased, and then start looking for the brokers or the people that they're recommending in their town, because it's kind of like all community based. There's not one central website that's managing that. I knew a guy that was trying to build that, and he ended up quitting on the project. But there isn't like a €1 Italy sort of website where all of them are listed, or even cheap properties. I've started to showcase some of the cheap properties on a website that I put up, cheappropertiesinitaly.com or cheaphousesinitaly.com. But there isn't something that's like a universal tool.
Gotcha. And then Charles, I was treated quite well in Italy, even more so when I was whipped out of that U.S. passport. We have a passport privilege. People will open up to you. Don't expect total strangers to say hello on the street.
Yeah, well, total strangers will say hello. It just depends on the size of the city. Small towns, people are warmer. That's just the rule of thumb. Big cities, like where most tourists are going to go, they could care less. Everybody's just trying to get to where they want to be.
I feel like they're probably fed up with tourists. I heard it like in Europe and in Barcelona specifically, they were like they had like water guns and they started squirting the tourists because they're like tired of tourists over there.
People in Barcelona are notoriously tired of something. They're constantly bickering about something in Barcelona. It's just
Yeah, I think in Barcelona, I went there last. I've been to Barcelona twice. I was there last summer and they had a huge sign and it said go away gringos, like something like that. Like they didn't want gringos to be there even last year. So I could only imagine how long this has been going on.
yeah.
Um but
They've been trying to separate from Spain.
yeah, that's what I heard. They're trying to be their own country. I mean, they speak their own language over there too, Catalan
Yeah,
and all that.
yeah. So they, that I you got to take that with a grain of salt. I would still recommend people go out there and visit and enjoy themselves.
Oh, I love Spain, man. I love Spain. And I know you do have a property in Valencia, right?
I'm moving to Valencia. I don't have property out there yet.
Oh, I could. Yeah, I think you know what? I saw videos about Valencia, and I just assumed you had property in
Yeah,
Valencia.
and we're thinking about moving there. So I've been going out there to kind of gauge, where we're going to live and where we're going to settle in.
So it's a random question I didn't even think about, but why did you pick Valencia over other cities in Spain?
Well, Valencia is near the coast, and it's like I believe it's the third largest city. So it's a coastal city, and it isn't as populated as Madrid and Barcelona. And kind of like I kind of like those secondary cities. Like in the United States, I live in Fort Lauderdale. It's not Miami. It's close enough to get to get what I would like out of Miami out of it, but still a small enough town that I feel like I'm not overwhelmed with traffic or just what comes with a big city. I like Charlotte, North Carolina city. I like Tampa. I like those secondary cities more so than like large principal cities.
The capitals.
Yeah. So I've always lived coastal. So Valencia is coastal. It's not Barcelona, but close enough. And because of that, the people are a little bit nicer. Cost of living is a little bit lower. Just the things that I like.
Yeah, Barcelona is very expensive too. So yeah, when I was out there, like the Airbnb was super expensive. Everything was expensive compared to the rest of Spain. But iCast Enterprises says, glad to make a few minutes of the live stream. My wife and daughter and I are working on a plan to move north of Carl in the Cinque Terre region.
Cinque Terre region, yep.
More specifically, Vernazza to begin with. Is that in Italy?
Yep.
Yeah, these are places I haven't heard of, man. I got to get more familiar with Italy. I only know a couple cities out in Italy. So Carl, what are the most common misconceptions that people have about buying property abroad?
I don't know if they have misconceptions. I would say probably the biggest misconception is that they think the lending facilities are like they are in the United States. So I would say the U.S. is very, very real estate friendly when it comes to the creation of mortgages and or kind of unique products for real estate. From what I've seen in other countries, not so much so. Harder to get mortgages, horrible terms. Like right now in Colombia, you're looking at 20 to 30% down as a foreigner, and interest rates of 14 to 22% on real estate, which is just doesn't make any sense. It's like credit card cash advance rates for real estate. But I would say the lending terms are what people are most surprised by when they start looking at real estate outside of the country. Also, the criteria for approval for real estate is also a little tighter than it is in the United States.
All right. So the next question I have for you is, what are some key factors someone should consider when looking to purchase property in a foreign country?
I think the very first thing that you need to be clear on is why do you want to do that? And what do you want out of your property? So a lot of people's vision board starts with, I want to move to Brazil. I want to move to Rio. And it's like, well, why do you want to move to Rio? Well, it's a beautiful place. It's like, okay, That's the only reason? Yeah, sure. Okay. So you want to move there because it's a beautiful place. All right. So do you want that temperature all year round? The temperature varies, but what are you looking for? Are you looking for a home? Are you looking for a condominium? How many bedrooms do you need? What are your space requirements? How much do you want to spend? Have you considered what your residency situation is going to be like? How are you generating your income? Are you living off of your retirement income? Are you planning on finding work there? What do you do for work? So I think before moving to or buying real estate in another country, I think you really need to be clear on what it is that you want. I get a lot of people who reach out to me and say, I want to buy a house in Italy. And my first question to them is, what's your budget and what are your space requirements? Do you want a freestanding house with a yard and outdoor space? Or do you want a townhouse? Or do you want an apartment within a building? Right? All of these things are going to influence the price and influence where you might be buying. How close do you want to live to the coast? How close do you want to live to a major airport? What sort of transportation needs do you have? So what about schooling? Do you need education for your children? Healthcare? There's so many things to consider. So I would go through that same list that I'm describing first with what are the parameters for the house itself? Then what are the parameters for the community? And ultimately, what's your budget when it comes to space and capital?
I love what you said there, man, because I'm conflicted between right now Brazil and Spain because I love both of those countries a lot. Specifically in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, and then in Spain it would probably be Barcelona, but Barcelona's a little pricey. So I consider all these factors. So I consider, all right, how's the weather's like? How are my finances like? How's the cost of living over there? The quality of life, stuff like that. So I feel like when you're planning on moving overseas, like you said, you have to take these things into consideration. And I don't know how much you know about the education system in Brazil, because that's actually something I'm very curious about. Do you know anything about the education system in Brazil? How is it like in Brazil?
They have a different school year schedule than we do, mainly because they have the inverted kind of the south of the equator. So they have an inverted schedule. So like right now, it is winter in Brazil, especially like southern Brazil. It's winter. And summer is like our Christmas season, like up here. So December, January, February is their summertime. So the school year is kind of flipped around that schedule. Then you have a few different tiers of school. The public school system is pretty poor.
Okay.
Is not so good. And then you have your first level of private schools. And then you have like your premier private schools where the wealthy Brazilians would send their kids. And then you have, of course, your international schools, which are probably like just a little tier above that, where the international business folks and the diplomats are going to have their children going to school. But that's the range there. So I would say the private schools aren't that costly, maybe a few $100s a month. And then they get expensive, like up to $30,000-$40,000 a year if you want to spend that much.
Yeah, I was just curious about that because I think when people move abroad, I feel like they fail to consider that eventually you're going to want a family down over there. So the thing is, how's the education system? So that's the thing that I thought about, because I know in Spain, from what I hear, is a very good education system, unless I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But that's what I hear. But Brazil, I'm not too sure about that. So I had to ask that question because I was very curious about that.
Yeah, to put it plainly, infrastructurally speaking, Spain is far ahead of Brazil in a lot of ways. So when it comes to the public transportation system, the education system, the healthcare system, a much larger middle class, all those things are going to be better in Spain on average than Brazil. In Brazil, where you are economically is going to really shape what your experience is going to be, right? So the middle class, unfortunately, doesn't have the same benefits and privileges as the middle class in the United States or in like Western Europe. So you really, if you're going to go to Brazil and you're able to port your income, you can live a really wonderful life, right? You can isolate, you can put yourself in a bubble and live a fantastic life. But if you're looking at kind of comparing the middle to the middle, it doesn't quite compare.
So since we're on the topic of Brazil, what do you recommend? What do you think is the best neighborhood in Rio de Janeiro to live in? Is it Baja or is it a different?
Baja, I would say, yeah. I would say like if you're a younger professional looking to have a family, I would say Baja da Tijuca is a good choice, because there, like Baja was really developed starting like in the 1990s. So the planning, like the urban development and planning, was better. So there's more outdoor space, more separation of buildings, more so than like the Copacabana, Ipanema, Leblon region. And it also is kind of like a little more affluent. So a lot of the services are better. There's you don't really have poverty issues in Baja like you may have in Ipanema, for example, because you could be in Ipanema, Leblon, and butt it up right against a favela. That happens there. And then you're going to have to deal with what comes along with poverty or that income gap. But I would say Baja is a good choice. I also like Recreo, which is just south of Baja de Tijuca. Is the next, if you continue further down the coast. It's like the expansion of Baja de Tijuca. But I would say Baja is probably the best choice at this point.
All right, let's get back to these comments over here, because we do have some comments. JD says, currently in Medellin, what are your thoughts on real estate for purchase here?
Man, very hard question. So like I'm in Medellin right now, and there's a new development going up across the street from my office. And the starting price for those condos is going to be about 150,000 US for like a 600 square foot apartment. Maybe 2 years ago, that might have been in the same kind of Poblado area, might have been 80, 90,000. So the prices have been going up. Now, the trade-off is one of my employees, she lives in a similar building right in Cachapol, which is in the same area, and she's paying $500 a month in rent. So you have $150,000 spend on an apartment that could only generate $500 to $700 a month in rent. So I feel like the properties don't cash flow well here, but you're seeing them keep up with kind of the growth of the city, right? So you can get some appreciation there. You may not get so much out of it from a rental standpoint. Also, you have to think about the lending terms here. They suck. So you're mostly looking at doing cash deals. Or if you have property in the US, for example, it might make more sense to restructure your debt there, refinance, take a home equity line of credit, and buy outright cash here, because the terms are going to be better on that debt than the terms on the debt here. With that being said, you know, I personally haven't bought property in Colombia for those reasons. I just can't make sense of the spend versus the revenue. I feel like I could buy a beat up house in, you know, upstate New York for 150,000 that I could rent out for $1,800. So I'd rather do that.
Interesting. All right. So iCast Enterprises says, with the new digital nomad visa, what has been the experience of those in your location that have moved there with that?
So I had some friends who moved down with the digital nomad visa. They ended up they stayed for a year and then they left. Right. So look, moving to a new country is a big change. And sometimes, the experience that you have on vacation isn't going to be your lifetime experience, right? Sometimes being in a place, you start to miss simple things like pasta sauce, simple things, cheese, certain different cheeses that you took for granted while you're in your local country. So I think most people who spend some time here, um, they tend to struggle with the change of it not being America, right? It not being the United States. But I think the city is constantly evolving, and there's a lot to love about being down here in Medellin. So, I think that's a person by person thing. Most of the time, people come down, they're attracted by the low cost, and then they get turned off by the air pollution, for example, or the poor insulation of buildings where it's kind of noisy at night. It's just those things can trigger people to move.
And that's interesting you say those things, man, because I felt that way sometimes, like traveling abroad, where you go to a different country you've never been to before, and they probably do things differently. Maybe they don't have the same things that they have in your native country. And you're like, damn, I took these things for granted in my country. I took these things for granted in America. Like, I remember when I went to Italy, even the smallest things, and I love Italy, but over there, I feel like they don't really believe in putting too much ice in the cup, like something as small as that.
Yeah, yeah.
They don't believe in putting ice in, like they'll put like 2 cubes of ice and call it a day. And like literally you're drinking it and it's already melted and the water or whatever it is already warm. Like something as small as that.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're in your apartment and you're trying to wash some clothes and there's only a washer, no dryer.
Yeah, you gotta try it on the rack. Yeah.
It is like that all around Europe though. Like I feel like they don't really believe in dryers over there. I guess to conserve energy. I'm not really sure why.
Yeah, it's energy conservation.
Yeah, but things such as that, like you really take it for granted. And it works the other way around, because when you spend a good amount of time in Italy or Spain and you come back to America and you're like, damn, I miss siesta. Like I miss those afternoon naps, man. So it works both ways, man. But that's the beauty of traveling, is every country does things differently. ICAS experience. No, I almost said experiences. ICAS Enterprises says that math doesn't always math. I think he's referring to Colombia.
To the real estate, yeah.
And then he says, good thing is I love my drinks, room temperature, and old country folks here in Tennessee been hanging a laundry for years. All right, so you'll fit right into Europe, man. That's how they do it in Europe, man. And another culture shock I faced in Italy was they don't cut up their pizza over there. Like when they give you like pies over there, they expect you to like slice it up with like a fork and a knife. Yeah, I thought you guys slice it up over here.
Depends on where.
Yeah, but I thought that was a culture shock for me when I went to Italy. I wasn't used to that. Charles, I hate ice in my drink, so that doesn't bother me. All right, man, go to Italy, go to Europe in general. Europe in general, not just Italy, but Europe in general. From most of the countries I've been there, they don't really believe in ice like that. They'll put like 2 cubes, call it a day. ICAS Enterprises says, when in Rome, do as the Romans. Yes, definitely, man. So let's talk about countries real quick. So which countries do you find are the most popular for people looking to buy property abroad, and why?
I really don't know, because ironically, I don't really talk to people about where they want to buy property abroad. I kind of see what's trending on social media in a way, and it might just be what I look at, right? So I don't know if it's realistic, like, or a representation of what people are looking for. I actually think most Americans don't really think about leaving altogether. And when they do think about leaving, it's because they either have like ancestral ties to a place, or it's like, Italy, France, kind of those like Japan, more like countries that are well covered in our history, right?
Yes.
That have a certain vibe to them, right? It's like you have people who are American and very much into the Japanese culture, who are very much into Italy, into France. I would say those are probably the three that people talk about the most. Um, Going into Central and South America, maybe Mexico. You have a large retiree
Expat.
population moving down into Mexico, and it's also familiar for Americans. They travel there all the time, so it's like, all right, they could start to see themselves living in Cabo San Lucas or living kind of in the Yucatan Peninsula, Merida, etc. Um, but I can't say there's one country that comes up more than the others. Since I cover Italy, a lot of people that follow me are interested in Italy more so than any other place that I've covered.
That's interesting, man. That's interesting because I think you got me hooked on Italy, man. I may have to start looking into all that right now, man. I'm gonna start looking at your videos after this, man. I want to see that €1 video, man, because now I'm very interested in all that. But for me, my main factors of moving abroad is one, cost of living, because I feel cost of living here in the States is insane. I remember you said that it costs what, $60 or whatever it is to get groceries in Italy for a week. Meanwhile, over here, you're spending like a good $300 or so, depending where you're going, and at minimum, you're spending like maybe 150 at minimum, 100 at minimum, and 100 is like kind of crazy. But if you go to Aldi's, you probably spend $100. But I feel like everything over here is just so expensive, and it keeps going up, keeps going up. The second one is quality of life. I feel in a place like in Europe specifically, even South America, as you said, people out there just want to enjoy themselves. They want to live their lives. Over there, they're more about working to live instead of the other way around, where they're living to work, like it is here in America. We have a very workaholic culture here in the States. So those are my main two factors as to why I would want to live abroad. And I'm sure a lot of people can probably think the same. But let's dive into more of legal type stuff. So what are some legal and financial considerations people should be aware of when buying property overseas?
For the most part, buying property doesn't automatically qualify you for residency. So a lot of people think, oh, if I could just buy a $10,000 home in Italy, can I become an Italian resident? And the answer is no. You're gonna need to spend way more than that to kind of buy your way into residency. A lot of countries have a residency by investment condition. Colombia has it. Portugal has it. I believe Italy does, but the amounts have to be higher. Brazil does. It's around 200 grand, or I think a million reais. So most people think that if I just get a property, it automatically qualifies me, and that's a common misconception. Second legal thing to consider is residency as a whole. If you plan on moving abroad, you need to figure out what visa you will qualify for. Some of the visas are because you made an investment. Some you get because you invested in a business. My visa, for example, here in Colombia, is based on I think I had to make like a $30,000 business investment, which I did in my own business here, and that qualified me for residency. And then also I have to employ people and et cetera. So that gave me a migrant resident visa here, which allows me to be here for 3 years, and then I could pursue longer term residency and kind of like then eventually citizenship. Other countries have similar programs. Like I think in Brazil, there are programs for visa by investment. Sometimes you get visas through marriage, through descent. Italy has a really good residency through descent or citizenship through descent program, and so does Spain, meaning if you could prove that you had like Italian grandparents or great grandparent, then you automatically qualify for citizenship within like 4 months, which is awesome to have EU citizenship in that short of time. So for those of you who have, an Italian grandfather or something along those lines, or a Spanish grandfather, you would be able to claim that. Those like Spain has a pretty good residency program for It's colonies. So a lot of like almost all of the Spanish colonies, you can get fast track residency in Spain. I'm probably going to do a video covering that as well, showing you like you could. It's like, oh, I think it's 3 years. It's like a 3-year citizenship track in Spain if you're coming from one of the Spanish colonies, the historically Spanish colonies. So I would say those are probably the top two. And when you're looking at residency is what's going to open you up to healthcare, education, banking. So you want to make sure, just like, if you're an illegal in the United States, you're kind of limited in a lot of ways. You want to make sure that you're legally entering those countries and that you have the necessary ability to function in their society.
All right. So we have a couple more stuff over. So we have no, let me go to Kellen. He says it is insane. Then he says, KP, proud to see you keep pushing. Best is yet to come. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Charles Jones, yeah, but let's be real. Most of us aren't getting Italian citizenship.
Well, I think you're right. Most people aren't going to get Italian citizenship, right? You got the whole world to look at. And those who do want Italian citizenship are going to pursue whatever channel they can, right? Whether it's marriage or investment or descent. You gotta choose what you want.
Yeah, so you mentioned something about Spain, about the colonies and all that. And I'm actually Dominican. So my family Dominican, all that. So I've actually been looking into Spain and all that because I feel like I might be able to get my what is the residency in Spain? Yeah, more easier compared to other places. So that's actually one of the reasons why I've been looking into Spain, and that's because of that. And also I love Spain so much. So yeah, man, it's between Brazil and Spain for me when it comes to moving. But the next question, I have a couple more questions for you, Carl. I know your time is limited. But what are some red flags or pitfalls to avoid when purchasing property abroad?
Not working with licensed professionals, right? You want to make sure that you're working with reputable companies. Always work with licensed brokers. Always work with attorneys. That's going to be your best bet, right? Work with people who are established in the community. They have a functional office. They have some years there, because you have, fly-by-night swindlers everywhere. And if you're in an area that is growing quickly, or like, for example, in Musumeli, there were a few bad actors that were misrepresenting properties, and they weren't even local. They were foreigners that started selling properties that they really didn't have the rights to sell. So you want, the best way to avoid that is working with the local, well-established companies in the area, and you'll avoid those sort of pitfalls.
So for someone who's looking to move abroad, what would be the first step they would have to take in this process?
Visit. I would say go there, spend some time there, and not just like a vacation visit, but like a real exploratory visit. See if you could do 30 days, 90 days there. And that's going to give you enough time to get over the honeymoon phase of being a traveler, and also allow you to start making the necessary connections that you need to make. Because usually what happens is you go to a well-traveled location, but you don't really explore that much from that location. So how are you really going to learn what's really good for you or not, right? And you're not going to figure that out in 2 weeks. So I would say go there, spend an extended period of time there, make friends, see what it's like during different holidays, and really make sure that you're making the right decision for you, right? Because you don't want to hastily make a change like that and to only find out that it's a bad move for you.
No, exactly, man. You dropped a lot of gems there, man, because I've been thinking about it myself, because I'm like, all right, if I'm planning on moving to Rio de Janeiro, I want to be there longer than 2 weeks. I kind of want to know all the different neighborhoods, how it actually works out there, making friends, all that, to see for myself, okay, is this a good investment to make? Is this a good decision to make? Is the last thing I want to do, as you said, is to move somewhere and like, oh no, this wasn't the right decision. Oh man, now what? So that's the last thing I want. So yeah, man, totally. I 100% agree with you on that one. The last question I have for you, Carl, is what advice would you give someone considering a move abroad but is hesitant about the process?
I don't know. I'm kind of impulsive, so so when I get that feeling, I tend to just do it because I don't like to not do something and live with like regret that I didn't do what I thought about doing. But if you're having thoughts about moving abroad and you have doubts, just create a checklist, right, of the pros and cons and the things that you would need out of that new place, and go about it in a very pragmatic way so that you know that you made the right decision, right? That it wasn't impulse and that you didn't not do it because of fear, right? That you actually really assessed why you are or not making that decision. If you just kind of stay in this like weird space of I wish, like I don't know, I don't do that well. So I like to try to put my ideas down on paper and say, hey, why do I want to live? The same thing I said at the top. Why do I want to live here? What do I want out of my property? What do I want out of my social life? Do I want to have a family? Do I have a family? What do they want? I really try to think through things in that way and make the best decision based on the information that I have in front of me. And that's what I would advise anybody else do. Because when you make your decisions that way, you kind of looked at it from a few different angles and you can be a little more confident in the decision that you make at that time.
Yeah, I'm asking the question because I feel like I'm currently in that stage right now where it's like I'm thinking about it, but I'm hesitant on it.
So why are you hesitant on it?
Hesitant because I like a lot of the luxuries that I have here in the States. I know other countries, they don't have those same luxuries.
What luxuries do you like in the States that you feel that you cannot separate from?
I just like how quickly everything is here. So as soon as you know what I mean, something as small as that, like you order something online, it's there the next day. You go to a restaurant, they're you the entire time. When you go to other countries, everything is a lot slower. Like they take their time with it. They might get to it maybe next year. Like it's a lot slower of a lifestyle overseas compared to here, where it's quick. So that's one thing I think we take for granted here in the States, because we have it good here when it comes to customer service. In my opinion, that's another thing is customer service.
Yeah,
like I don't know if you dealt. I'm sure you have, where something might have happened. You called up the company, whatever the case is, and they're over here like they don't really care.
Yeah.
I remember I went to Paris with my family. My sister lost her luggage. I think it was France Airlines, I think it was Airways, and we were calling up the airport, everything, and they were just like so nonchalant about like, yeah, whatever, okay, like giving us attitude. Like in the States, that wouldn't fly, so little things like that, for me, it goes a long way. But at the same time, like I said, cost of living is important to me, and also quality of life. And I feel like, yeah, my quality of life here isn't bad, but the thing is, it could be better. The cost of living up and up. And I feel like in a place like a Brazil, for example, which, by the way, Brazil isn't necessarily super cheap, especially compared to other countries, but it's still a lot cheaper than the United States. And I would say the same thing about Spain as well, which Spain is a little bit more expensive than Brazil as well. So that's just my main things is I'm trying to weigh the pros and the cons. And if the pros outweigh the cons, then I'm like, all right, you know what? I think this might be a smart investment, a smart decision to make. That's just the way I look at things.
Have you set a timeline for yourself?
So yeah, guys. So the timeline I got for myself is because I'm actually looking to get remote work. So I'm looking to get remote work. So I'm gonna start taking classes very soon in order to make it possible. Because right now my job doesn't allow me to work remote 5 days a week. It's only twice a week I get, and I have to be in person a lot of the time. So I want to make sure I have consistent pay while I'm overseas, especially making US dollar. So once I get that, I'm gonna start. I want to get used to my new job, and then once I get used to the new job, from there, I'm thinking of going into Rio. So we're talking about next summer, probably this time next year, probably. From there, I want to be able to be in Rio as long as I can. Rio, maybe go to a different city, see which city I like better. But to be honest, I think it might be Rio when it comes to Brazil, and I want to be there at least for 90 days. I think that's how much you get. I believe 90 days. I want to be there for 9 days and get like the vibe is okay. Like, can I live here? Like, do I like it here? And I think 90 days like should be sufficient enough for me to determine. And then I can move on to a different country, see how I like it there, which might be Spain. And then from there, once I hop around a little bit, I'm able to tell which country it is that I want to live in.
Yeah,
So that
makes sense to me. It sounds like
might take me until maybe the end of next year.
Yeah, sounds like a sensible plan.
Yeah, my bad. I'm done now.
Yeah, sounds like a sensible plan. Totally. Yeah, I think that's the right way to go about it. Right, you're firming up your income and saying, hey, I know that I'm going to be able to continuously earn in US dollars. So I want to square that away, and at the same time, I'm going to test it out and feel it out and see exactly how this is going to feel for me, right? Without really sacrificing too much. And once you see which place it's going to be, you make your decision.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe by the end of this all, maybe I'll have decided by then, okay, you know what? Maybe it's best if I stay in the United States. But the last thing I want to do is move to a different country, off of impulse or emotion. And then I'm like, damn, I kind of don't want to be here anymore. Like, it seemed good in those vacations but that's the thing, man. I think we sometimes as people, we get things twisted because we go out there for vacation and these places feel great for vacation, right? Like, oh, this is a dope spot. I like vacationing here. But when you're living there, it's a whole different experience. So I feel like you have to kind of separate the two.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a common feeling. Like, man, if I just lived here, life would be so great. And you don't really look at some of the outlying factors, like no Amazon Prime or whatever.
Yeah.
But all in all, for me, right? Like you said, your family's from DR, my family's from Haiti. I look at those experiences of what moving to a new country does to you, as far as opening your mind, giving you completely new experiences. And I feel like one of the best things that you can do is immigrate or emigrate somewhere, right? It's gonna force you potentially to learn a new language, make new friends, and see things from a completely different perspective. So even if it's short-lived, I think it's something that all people should experience at least in their life. So whether it sticks or it doesn't, I wish you the best on that journey. And I at the very worst, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, you said something earlier in the interview. You said that that I think it went something along the lines of what if, like, you don't want to live your life saying, what if I did that? What if I did this? And that's where I'm at, because it's kind of like, I don't want to go through my life saying, damn, what if I, actually move to a different country? I mean, I don't want to sleep at night knowing that I didn't do that. So I'm like, man, I'm still young enough to get it done. Like, I don't really have a family or anything just yet. I don't have any ties to anything. Might as well try. And if it doesn't, if it does, even better, So, yeah, man, I'm just gonna travel around. I'm gonna keep traveling around, seeing what I like, and keep watching your videos, of course, man, because you're dropping a lot of gems, man. I really appreciate you coming. Can you tell everyone where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me at Carl Pierre. If you just search my name, KarlPierre. Usually on Instagram or YouTube, it's separated with like a hyphen or two. I believe on Instagram it's Carl-Pierre. And then, I'll keep going. You dropped out for a second. So it's Carl-Pierre, or Carl__Pierre on Instagram, and on YouTube, I believe it's just my name, Carl, Karl Pierre. You can find me there. I put out content regularly. Actually, we're currently promoting a group trip that we're doing to Sicily, where we are going to do a tour of 3 towns, showing the different real estate opportunities that exist there, including some of the €1 homes, as well as projects that I've already completed in Musomelli and Castellammare del Golfo, which is like a community or a beach community or coastal community near one of the larger cities there. So have a lot of cool things going on. And for anybody who is interested in learning how to invest in real estate, I do invest with people that learn from me. I have a course called Killing the American Dream, where we teach how to invest in 1 to 4 family real estate in the United States, where I teach you exactly how I've gone about building out a 7-figure real estate portfolio and how you could potentially do the same. I ain't on the Forbes list yet, and I actually don't know if I'll ever make it. Because my final play is this home care play that I have, and unless the software company really takes off, I see myself being comfortably rich and calling it quits and just living my life, Kellen. There we go. Yeah.
So Carl, I really appreciate you coming by, man. I just really do appreciate it, man, because I'm such a fan of your content, of the videos, the message you're spreading, the knowledge that you're spreading, man. It was such a pleasure to have you on, man. And I can't wait to see what more things you're going to be doing in the future with your YouTube channel, your business, everything, man. I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna watch all of it, man. You know, in fact, after this, I'm gonna watch your Italy videos, man, because now I'm very interested in Italy, man. So I have to blame you for that.
Yeah, those are some of my best ones. Check them out. And like I was saying, anybody who wants to reach out to me, you can. Me or somebody on my team will certainly respond to you and kind of put you in the right direction.
All right. Well, Carl, thank you so much. And guys, that wraps up episode number 22 of Real Talk. We'll be back maybe later this week, next week with number 23. So I hope you guys have a good rest of your night, and peace out, guys. Take care.
Take care.